The U.S. China tech rivalry is not just about who has the coolest gadgets. It's now a power play reshaping global politics. Since 2017, this tech war has been brewing in the global electronics scene, with tariffs, export bans, market restrictions, you name it. The U.S. China competition has sent shockwaves through supply chains and forced countries to rethink trade routes. The U.S. has been diversifying its imports to new friends, leaning more on countries like Mexico, Taiwan, and Vietnam. However, even with all the tension, both countries remain deeply interdependent. They depend on each other in ways that make a clean break almost impossible. The question is, how long can this delicate balance last before it tips over completely? Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Europe appears to be experiencing its own geopolitical shift. Have you noticed the headlines? Spain has defied the EU with a massive investment in China, raising eyebrows across the continent. As one of the G7's major currency holders, could this bold move signal a serious shift in Europe's relationship with China? What's Spain's endgame, and why should the entire EU be paying attention? The chip war, as some have called it, describes the intense rivalry between the United States and China over semiconductor manufacturing. Now, why are these tiny chips such a big deal? Well, semiconductors are the brainpower behind modern technology. They're in everything: your smartphone, car, and even advanced military systems. Whoever controls chips controls the future. For decades, the US has been a leader in semiconductor innovation. They've been designing some of the world's most advanced chips, thanks to giants like Intel and Apple. But at the end of the day, designing is one thing, producing them is another. While the US leads in design research and development, about 60% of semiconductor manufacturing happens outside the US, especially in Taiwan. The rare earth minerals needed for these chips largely come from China too. A key player in this race is Taiwan, specifically the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, which produces over 60% of the world's most advanced chips. Both the United States and China depend on this company, as its products are used in everything from smartphones to military equipment. However, geopolitical tensions surrounding Taiwan pose risks to global supply chains. In response, the U.S. actively supports Taiwan's independence, providing economic and military assistance to deter any potential attempt by China to take control of the island. So, while the U.S. might be ahead in terms of cutting-edge chip design, it's heavily dependent on a global supply chain to make those designs a reality. To stay ahead, the U.S. has been investing in domestic manufacturing, protecting intellectual property, and restricting advanced tech exports to China, all under the umbrella of national security. China, on the other hand, doesn't want to rely on anyone, especially the US, for its semiconductor needs. They're making big moves to become self-reliant by investing billions in research and development to boost their domestic chip industry. They're also working on producing legacy chips, which are less advanced chips but still critical, and they've made huge progress. In 2023, China accounted for 31% of the global market for these legacy chips. Their ultimate goal is to build an entirely self-sufficient supply chain and lead in semiconductor production. Interestingly, the seeds of this conflict were planted decades ago. In the 1990s and early 2000s, the United States and China actively developed cooperation in technology and trade. China joined the WTO in 2001, which gave it access to global markets and stimulated economic growth. However, by the 2010s, as China became a technologically advanced player and began challenging US leadership, cooperation shifted to strategic rivalry. China's growing economic and military power made the US uneasy, sparking a series of protectionist policies. Under President Trump, the US cracked down on Chinese tech companies.
We can't continue to allow China to rape our country, and that's what they're doing.
President Biden doubled down with the CHIPS and Science Act of 2022, aimed at bringing chip manufacturing back to American soil. But the US isn't stopping there. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Bureau of Industry and Security, BIS, dropped a new set of rules aimed at crippling China's ability to produce advanced semiconductors. These new rules are comprehensive. They include restrictions on 24 types of semiconductor manufacturing equipment, software tools for semiconductor production, and high-bandwidth memory, HBM. Plus, there are additions to the US Entity List, which directly targets Chinese manufacturers, semiconductor fabs, and companies connected to China's military modernization. The goal is to limit China's access to tools and technologies while maintaining the U.S.'s dominance in semiconductors critical for AI, advanced computing, and next-gen military systems. China, however, is far from passive in this technological race. Leading firms like Huawei and SMIC are spearheading efforts to reduce the nation's reliance on foreign technology. Huawei, for example, is actively developing its own processors, such as the Ascend series, to compete with NVIDIA's industry-leading AI chips. However, U.S. sanctions have restricted access to critical technologies like extreme ultraviolet lithography, EUV, essential for producing cutting-edge chips. As a result, Huawei has been constrained to using older 7-nanometer technology, highlighting the challenges imposed by the ongoing restrictions.
Huawei has reportedly told potential clients that the chip is comparable to NVIDIA's H100.
Nevertheless, Chinese companies are adapting. They are lowering prices and offering chips at significantly reduced costs, ramping up production volumes to remain competitive in the memory chip market. According to TrendForce, DRAM production, a type of dynamic random access memory essential for fast data storage and processing in computers, smartphones, and AI systems, is expected to grow by 25% next year. A significant portion of this growth will come from Chinese suppliers, despite existing restrictions. DRAM is a critical battleground, as it is indispensable for high-performance devices, including data processing servers and artificial intelligence systems. As China's influence grows, the United States and other countries face a significant challenge in securing critical resources and technologies. Let's start with rare earth metals, 17 elements, including neodymium and lanthanum, which are used in everything from smartphones and electric vehicles to military equipment and artificial intelligence. China produces about 70% of the world's rare earth metals and has nearly monopolized their processing. It accounts for approximately 85–90% of the global capacity for refining and preparing these elements for industrial use. This gives China a strategic advantage, as these resources are essential for other countries to develop high-tech industries and ensure national security. One of the most striking examples of China leveraging its dominance in rare earth resources occurred in 2010 when Beijing restricted the export of rare earth metals to Japan amid a territorial dispute over the Senkaku Islands. This caused significant problems for Japanese industries and highlighted the strategic vulnerability of countries dependent on China. In response, many nations, including the United States and Australia, began taking steps to reduce their reliance on Chinese supplies. For the United States, this issue is particularly critical regarding key minerals such as germanium. Half of the U.S. supply of this metal comes from China. Germanium is vital for manufacturing fiber optics, infrared optics, and advanced military technologies such as thermal imaging and missile guidance systems. With its unique optical and electronic properties, germanium plays an essential role in modern communications and defense infrastructure. China knows it has the power here, so recently it's made it a lot harder for other countries to get access to these materials. They've even put restrictions on exporting some of these rare minerals, causing a real stir in the global market. But the U.S. is fighting back. For example, a U.S. mining company has discovered gallium deposits in Montana, though it will take years to establish a reliable mining operation. Similarly, there are ongoing efforts to extract rare earth elements from domestic mines, including a project in West Virginia and North Dakota. The U.S. government is also investing in the development of antimony used in batteries and military gear with a $510,000 grant to support a mine in Idaho. However, China's strategic hold on these resources still presents a significant challenge. The Chinese government has expanded export restrictions to include not only rare earth elements, but also super hard materials like tungsten, critical for military applications such as armor-piercing ammunition. These moves are putting pressure on the global supply chain, and countries like the U.S. are scrambling to find alternative sources or increase domestic production to fill the gap. Now, it's not just about minerals. This is also about chips, which are the brains behind all this technology. The U.S. is trying to stop China from advancing too much in making super powerful chips for military use and AI, so the Biden administration has been taking action. They've added over 140 Chinese companies to a trade blacklist, making it harder for China to get their hands on advanced semiconductor tech. But this isn't just a U.S. China thing. Think of it like a big game with multiple players. As we said earlier, Taiwan, for example, produces more than 60% of the world's most advanced chips, and it's right in the middle of all this tension. China wants to control Taiwan, but the U.S. backs Taiwan's independence. So you can see how the game's getting complicated. To make things even more intense, there's talk of President-elect Trump coming into the picture, promising even more aggressive moves against China, like adding 100% tariffs on Chinese goods. The idea is to make it tougher for China to compete while trying to level the playing field for American businesses. What's happening here? It's simple. Everyone's trying to secure their place, whether it's by finding new mineral sources, building their own chip production, or creating trade policies to protect their interests. This tug of war could mean only one thing for us everyday consumers. We could see higher prices on everything, from your phone to your grocery bill, maybe some slowed down innovation, and a bit of geopolitical chaos on the horizon. Now, while all this is going down between the US and China, Europe is trying to figure out its own strategy. Let's zoom in on Spain for a second. They made a huge move by attracting record investments from China, focusing on some of the most promising industries of the future like renewable energy and high-tech manufacturing. This is turning heads in Europe because the EU has been pretty cautious about how much they want to get involved with China. They've been on the lookout trying to figure out how close is too close when it comes to China's influence in global markets. And Spain? Well, they just decided to go all in. Can you blame them? The EU is facing significant challenges right now with a projected growth rate of just 0.9% per year over the next 15 years. This essentially amounts to a prolonged period of economic stagnation, not exactly an encouraging outlook. Now, in the middle of all this, Spain is starting to do something a little different. They're looking for ways to break free from this sluggish trend, and honestly, it seems like they might be onto something. For example, Spain opposed the EU tariffs on China, which is a bold move, and now they've gone a step further. China's battery giant CATL is teaming up with Spain to build a massive battery factory in northern Spain. And get this, the investment is huge. 4.1 billion euros translates to $4.3 billion. They're going to produce lithium iron phosphate batteries, which are used in things like electric cars by 2026. And the best part is that they want the plant to be carbon neutral, using Spain's solar, wind, and water energy. This move is shaking up Europe's big plans to create its own green economy to compete with China. Because let's face it, China is way ahead when it comes to electric cars and batteries. Companies like CATL and BYD have been in the game for years, and they're selling batteries at prices that European companies just can't match. Europe's trying to catch up, but it's struggling. EV sales are slow, and some companies are even scrapping their electrification plans because they're not seeing enough demand. Europe has always wanted to build its own battery industry, but it's tough. China controls about 80% of the global lithium-ion battery supply, and with China's production capacity already way ahead of global demand, it's hard for anyone else to compete. So Spain's move could change the game. And let's not forget that the US and Canada are also in the mix, working overtime to attract investments and lock in their spot in the electric vehicle race. Everyone's eyeing the prize here, and it's not just about batteries or cars, it's about controlling the future of tech and resources. So, Spain's gamble is undeniably bold. But the real question is, could this move shift the balance in Europe-China relations? Let's take a broader look. Who will ultimately win the race for technology and resources? Will it be the United States, with its status as an innovation powerhouse and boundless ambition? Or will it be China, the Middle Kingdom, already far ahead in key areas like EV production and rare earth dominance? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest global developments. See you in the next video.